Okay, thank you. Well, welcome everybody to the APrIGF Townhall Session 1. It is the ending of the first day of the conference. I hope you have all had a wonderful first day. I think many of you have also joined us in day 0, the capacity building day yesterday, which was also filled with very interesting inputs and learnings and sharings from fellows, newcomers, and also people who've been around and, old timers and veterans as well. So my name is Jennifer Chung. I'm from the APrIGF Secretariat team. Just really a brief welcome, because I really want to save most of the time to listen to everybody's thoughts and inputs on everything interesting that they've heard today in all the sessions, and also yesterday as well. A very brief, my slides are not working. Okay, they are. So really brief introduction, because everybody's here really knows what APrIGF is. It really is a platform for discussion and exchange on internet governance, especially, of course, focusing on our region, the Asia Pacific. And we kind of aggregate and combine all these stuff. And we usually, in this session, it's used to feed into our synthesis document process, which becomes a very important output of the annual APrIGF. So what is the APrIGF and why is it, how does it even come about? We do have a multi-stakeholder steering group. I think a lot of you who have joined us yesterday during the capacity building session has heard, our chair Raj talk a bit about, what the MSG is. People who kind of were joining us today for the first time did also hear the opening plenary a little bit more about, how the program is driven throughout the year. And basically the multi-stakeholder steering group of APrIGF is open to everybody in the Asia Pacific region. If you're interested to join us, please do. You send us an email, the Secretariat email at sec@aprigf.asia, and we'll give you all the information. And their basic mandate is to support, ensure the proper conduct of the work of the annual meeting, and to promote and encourage dialogue amongst all the stakeholders in our region, and to act as an interface and a conduit as well. And I really want to get to the meat of this session. So this town hall session is interesting because when we had a physical meeting, it really was a place for everybody to gather. Not really like, the traditional form of a town hall where you gather in the middle of a town square, but, this is in the spirit of it, and we're doing it in a virtual manner here. Hopefully next year we'll be able to do it in physical location, but we're very glad to have this virtual town hall. And it's really to listen to your ideas about what you think is important that you've heard in this meeting. And it is to put into the synthesis documents. And this document really has been a really important innovation for APrIGF, and it collects the items and the ideas of common interest which are relevant to us here in the region. And it's really important also that it's not just generalized high-level concepts. It is the actual highlights that we discuss at the meetings, at the workshops, at every single session that you enjoy and participate in. Just a brief little history. It's been quite a few years now. It's like, I can't really count anymore, but we started back in New Delhi in 2014. And the actual first publication came out in 2015, and it's going to be our 6th publication this year. Who is in charge of driving this process forward? This is actually the great responsibility of our drafting committee. You see on the slide here, we have co-chairs. We have 2 co-chairs. Our first co-chair is Brinda Dash, and our second is Sherry Lagakuli. We have Sherry is the current chair of PIC-ISOC. She's which is the Pacific Island chapter of the Internet Society Board, and is the Pacific liaison for the Global Forum of Cyber Expertise. This puts together the requirements and design for a GFCE office in the Pacific. Sherry is passionate about empowering women in ICT to leadership roles, as well as ensuring a better, safer, affordable, accessible, Internet for the Pacific. And this is Sherry's third time on the drafting committee, going back to Brenda. And I think I especially wanted to highlight, Brenda is actually one of our fellows for APrIGF this year. So it's really great to welcome her in a leadership position here. Brenda is from India. She previously taught students from low-income communities. She was selected as a Youth IGF India Fellow last year and represents the civil society in the internet governance space. She advocates for closing the gender digital divide and child safety online. So our two co-chairs, I would like to pass the mic now to Sherry to tell you a little bit more about the drafting committee.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. It's so good to see so many familiar faces. As is the case with virtual events, you always wonder if you're going to be the only one in the room presenting to yourself. So it's so good to see so many people today. It is about 9 p.m. here in Fiji, I think 10 p.m. in New Zealand. So thank you, Winston, for making it at this time. I'd like to go on to our drafting committee members. We have about 14 or so people in the drafting committee this year, and a number of, with the asterisks, are those that are returning. And the ones that we have about 5 to 6 fellows. And it's, like Brenda, it was encouraging to see that our fellows were interested in engaging and, putting in comments and feedback into this synthesis document. Jen, on to the next slide, please. So this is the process of the synthesis document. It is reconstituted every year, and you have a public commenting period. There are two ways that you could input into this synthesis document. Firstly, with the online comment platform, which I think you've been hearing throughout today and yesterday, and the links have also been coming in the chat, and also this Townhall Session, which is one today and one the same time tomorrow. We want to hear what your issues. This is the best way for you to voice your concerns from this region, from your country, relating to the internet, relating to governance, safety online. And then there will be a collaborative drafting through the collaborative platform. And then later on, we will have this document published. And so we have a timeline for this commenting period. Jen, if we could go on to the next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. All right. So in red is where we are right now. First, we had a review, a drafting, and then there was some back and forth meetings in the committee. The committee members were split into 3 groups of the sub-themes that you'll hear about later on. And then there was a public input for phase 1, and then now we have this town hall meeting where we'll be taking feedback from anybody that has things to comment about today from the sessions, or just in general from the last 2 days. And then we have public input period 2, which is from the 1st to the 8th of October. At the end of October, we want to have draft 1 published for public comment, and then at some time in the beginning of November, we're hoping to have a public input period 2. And in the middle of sometime between the beginning to the middle of November, the drafting committee will be working very hard to put together this synthesis document until we get to the final draft, which we're hoping to publish by the middle of November in time for the global IGF. I'm going to pass this over to my co-chair, Brenda Dash, to continue from here. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the APrIGF virtual town hall session. I hope you're all doing well. I understand the Zoom fatigue must have gotten to you after a really long day of sessions. So the overarching theme that you can see for this year's APrIGF is towards an inclusive, sustainable, and trusted internet, which covers 3 high-level thematic tracks: inclusion, sustainability, and trust. Jen, on to the next slide, please. Right. So as you can see from the graphic on your screen, the three high-level thematic tracks have various subtopics, some of which overlap. So APrIGF aims to approach discussions among the community in a more interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary manner. In the previous APrIGFs, the themes were more specific and descriptive. This year, the high-level thematic tracks encourage discussions on cross-cutting ideas related to internet governance in the Asia Pacific. So there's some big questions around the three high-level thematic tracks. So the first one being inclusion. How can stakeholders work together to ensure that no one is left behind and to support access to reliable and affordable internet? Around sustainability, what does sustainability of the internet mean? What is internet's impact on the environment? How resilient is the internet? And how can the internet-related technologies help to achieve the sustainable development goals? And around trust, what are the roles and responsibilities of different stakeholders to maintain trust in the internet? And how do you define trust in the internet? At this point of time, I'd like to just call upon Jennifer to share the housekeeping rules before we begin the virtual town hall.
Thank you, Brenda. So before we open the mic to everybody, we would like to remind all participants to use the raise hand button. If you're not able to find it in the Zoom room, it should be on your toolbar on the bottom of your screen. It should be in the reactions. And then when we ask you to unmute yourself, please remember to state your name and where you're from or your affiliation, and then give us your inputs. If you would prefer that your comment be read and you would prefer to type in the chat, please do so. The online moderator will show you in the chat, the formats you should put it in for us to know that this is something you would like us to read out loud. And yeah, just simple housekeeping rules. Please do remember to state your name because we are also getting the transcript so everybody can be notified and identified correctly. Back to you, Brenda.
Thank you, Jennifer. Gaia has a hand up. Gaia, you want to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to give a sort of brief key points that came up in the discussions today. I mean, are we already there? Shall I? Yeah.
Yes, we could start off. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was a fantastic day one. I couldn't catch the last session. I had a flash, but it really was like from the opening to the first two sessions, they were fantastic conversations, very well attended to. But I think there were two things that stood out for me from the sessions that I attended. From the opening and the first session, which was on environment and ICTs, it became quite clear how central the internet is, not just as a utility, but even as a means for survival in the current times. And I think that is probably language we want to see reflected in the synthesis document about how central the internet has become. And therefore, should the guarantees for access to internet go beyond service, whether it's something that governments should be obliged to make sure people have. I think that's a conversation to capture. The second thing that came out very strongly was different perspectives, especially of vulnerable groups. The gender perspective was fantastically captured in the showcase session. I think perhaps we need to bring in those conversations about making sure that ICT regulations and community standards need to be developed in a collaborative, inclusive way. I think those were two big points that I felt came out today.
Thank you so much, Gaia, for highlighting that. Exactly, the pandemic has shown us how the internet has become extremely indispensable in our lives and our reliance on it. Thank you so much. We have Fire Circle TT with, could you please go ahead?
Hi, everybody. My name is Nicole Hendrickson from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. I'm really appreciative of attending this in terms of seeing what happens elsewhere, because in the Caribbean, this is not really a huge conversation just yet, but I wanted to add two things in terms of how do we, well, a question really, how do we get mobile companies to be responsible? Because I had a situation where I had a client who her information was shared on a chat, and it seemed as if the mobile company didn't know. So it seems like nobody was monitoring it. And I get that, yes, people are allow their confidentiality, but I think in a way there was no way to have the client have any recourse. It took a while to get to them. So I'm not sure how, at least on this side, because in the Caribbean sometimes it seems like we'll be lagging behind the rest of the world sometimes. But how do we make mobile companies responsible in terms of how they manage their products? I guess is what I want to say. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you for giving your inputs from your region. Winston, we'll move on to you.
Thank you, Brenda. I first have to say that I'm going to speak quickly on a few points because then I have to rush out. I have to go and catch a train, as I mentioned on my email to you. So sorry about that. It's my personal life which is interfering with the session because it's late at night here. But I wanted to say, first of all, to repeat what I said before, that my main focus personally in the inclusion track would be the 3 points in the first line, line 5, which is that the inclusion has a technological dimension, a social dimension, and a human rights dimension. And I think we can attach many comments from the sessions onto those 3 points. And I would simply, I think you should encourage everyone to comment on the draft. I think maybe, I don't remember whether you told people the mechanics of how to comment, but I'm sure Jennifer, you can do that, or Brenda, you can do that. I also want to say that in the opening, there were some fantastic insights and observations. Vince Cerf made a very good comment about digital inclusion, which I noted down, so I can include that in these draft 0 comments. The lady from Kyrgyzstan made a very good comment about thinking and analysing information, which is important for digital literacy. Sarai Tivita from Samoa made very good comments about the importance of education, and that is very true, that education of young people, education of old people, education of the whole population is the answer to many of the challenges that we face. And education is, for example, a defense against hate speech and racism and things like that. I also want to make a huge shout out to the people who organised the showcase session on what was it called? Freedom of Expression Online, and particularly the co-hosts Dana and Sarita. That was a fantastic session, and it really, really emphasised the importance of protecting the vulnerable. And I think we should analyse the recording of that session carefully. I've taken notes on what was said. Many of the people said things which I quite agree with. I noticed a lot of people in that session were from South Asia, from Southeast Asia. I regret that there weren't enough people from the Pacific Islands and Australia and New Zealand, because we have those debates here, and they are really, really important debates. So I will put some notes in from those sessions as well. So the showcase was definitely thumbs up from me. That was a good session. That's all I just want to say at the moment, because now I need to go. So I wish you all the best for the rest of the session. I will stay longer tomorrow night in the town hall session tomorrow. Sorry to have to leave you.
No problem,
Okay.
Winston. Thank you so much for touching upon those very important points. You summarized the first and the next couple of sessions for us. Very important points to focus on. Thank you. Have a safe trip back home.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye.
Yes. To just add to what Winston said about education. I think since the morning, we've been having a lot of discussions around how important it is to promote education online or traditional manner, since it empowers the individuals and gives them a voice to share their opinions, their concerns in the wider community. Do we have a chat window? Is there something in the chat that I missed out on? Sherry, Jennifer?
I think, thank you, Brenda. Let's go to Joyce first. I can see that Joyce has her hand up.
Yes, Joyce, go ahead.
Thanks, Brenda, and thanks, Sherry. So I'm just going to jump ahead and give some comments on the theme of trust. And I think also it builds on what Winston said before me, particularly where it comes to education and digital literacy. I think so. The easiest thing to think about when you think about trust is really to look at it through the lens of security, and then also at what the actions people take in order to break or violate trust. But I think we should be thinking more about, for this document, how people are building trust. So instead of just looking through the lens of security and focusing on that, I'd like to broaden the topic of trust to cover more issues. And if we look at the sessions for this week, they cover so many other things. So, regulation, its effects on innovation and internet freedom, there's encryption and online safety, there's hate speech, censorship, surveillance. So there are a lot of other issues that they are not exactly touching on security, but they are still very critical to trust. And I think what's not that visible are the efforts that go behind developing trust between people, building, maintaining a trusted internet, as well as ensuring that we feel free as users to navigate online. And so I think my main point is that capacity building and cooperation are really important issues in terms of building trust. And if you look at the concentric circles on the slide you're showing now, capacity building is like right smack in the center because it cuts across all the themes. So I'd like for us to have at least a section in the document which really talks about capacity building and cooperation, acknowledging that people and processes are interconnected and appreciating that. So I don't want to predict what the sessions will discuss, in the next 2 days. But I do hope that we will be able to capture some concrete actions that people can take to build trust as part of our synthesis document outcomes. So that's mainly it. I do hope that the document, it's not going to just always remain at a more conceptual or high level, but be able to make some concrete recommendations of actions that people can take to build trust. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for that elaborate point. I also feel, to just add in, I also feel like the responsibility of the end users and in terms of capacity building is very important for the end users to understand what can be done from their end as to maintain trust in the internet as well. So I think that's also something that can be highlighted upon. Okay, Cheryl replied to Joyce saying, I look at it through the lenses of accountability and transparency, as well as our experiences with what we are establishing trust with, noting it takes way longer to gain it through experiences than it does to lose it from direct or reported negative interactions. Sharif, would you like to elaborate on your point a little bit?
Certainly, I'm happy to elaborate. Cheryl Langdon, for the record, and I keep saying that because I'm trained to do so. One of the things I think with trust is we need to recognise it means different things depending on the type of interaction we're looking at. The trust I need for a business transaction or a financial transaction is vastly different, but no less important than the trust I need to put into my social networking transactions. And so some of what we can say about the importance of it, the gaining of it, the maintaining of it, the risk of losing it will be universally applicable. But some of it will be very coloured by how important the loss of trust is to it. And I suppose that's what I was, in my clumsy way, trying to raise for our consideration.
Okay, I think Cheryl is having some connection problem with her audio. We'll come back. Gaia, would you want to explain your point that you've mentioned in the chat? Gaia,
sure, but this hasn't yet come up in in the sessions, but I think it'll come up in the session that I will be moderating on the 30th. But the notion of national security or cyber security having to mean people security or human security, I think that's important language, no? So that we are not just looking at security as something that is outside or something that needs to be always opposed to individual freedoms. We need to find a way to phrase it in such a way that it tantamounts to individual freedoms. To look at security also as a right.
Thank you. Thank you for your point, Gaia. Kaung has his hands up. Kaung, please go ahead.
Yes. My name is Kaung Sat-Nai, and I'm from Myanmar. I'm one of the fellows of APrIGF 2021, and one of the participants of YNGF 2021. I came here to discuss and share about the national security. We all know that we all need safety from violence and terrorism, but no government should sacrifice our rights, human rights, in the name of the national security. I expect that everyone might know the current situations in Myanmar are not very unstable, and a lot of human rights have been violated, including the internet shutdown is still occurring in Myanmar. Not only in Myanmar, but also in India, in Cuba, in Ethiopia has been suffered from the internet shutdown. So I want to know that the government cover that internet shutdown in the name of the national security. They also know that this had been violated the human rights and internet freedom and freedom of expression also. So I would like to know how the other fellows or other participants or other mentors had been working on that national security, and how the other countries had been working on that national security. And that's my point of question. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kaung. Kaung has basically opened up the floor for his question if somebody wants to go ahead and answer. Do we have some fellows, some mentors, someone from the MSG who would like to take up his query and answer Kwang's question?
I can try.
Yes.
So I think it's a really critical question, right? And this connects back to the original point I made about the centrality of the internet. I think the synthesis document needs to have as much as possible clear language on what we think about network shutdowns, especially at the time when the pandemic has pretty much turned almost all governance services to the internet. Then what does having internet shutdowns mean then? It literally means that you're being completely isolated, not just from communication, but from critical services at a time of turmoil like it is in Myanmar and Afghanistan, right? As far as international developments go, the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Assembly and Association has said that internet shutdowns are illegal. So perhaps it is also time for the synthesis document to take very clear language on the unacceptability of internet shutdowns, that it simply is a practice that should not happen. In fact, the Special Rapporteur on Assembly and Association goes as far as saying that it is illegal to have internet shutdowns. It's against international law to have internet shutdowns. So maybe it really is time to think about clear language on that. And the reason I'm saying that is because Asia hosts the highest number of internet shutdowns. Between India, Myanmar, and Pakistan, we pretty much account for 50 to more than 50% of the global internet shutdowns.
Thank you so much for highlighting that. It'd be great if you could add that onto the document as well, to highlight it under the inclusion thematic track of it. I seem to have missed Rohit's comment earlier. I'm just going to go ahead and read it out or Rohit has a hand up. Would you like to go ahead and speak, Rohit?
Okay, yeah, Brenda. So
do you want me to read your comment out, or would you like to speak about it?
Okay, no. So that is an extension of the question. So my question is, okay, so I'll give a brief introduction about me. So I'm an MBA student from Symbiosis. And my question to you is, I've been given a CSR assignment, a corporate social responsibility. And in that, we were given SDG goals. There are 7 SDG goals that has been assigned by the United Nations. But when you check all the SDG goals, I don't see anything related to internet governance over there. Don't you think that if we add one of the SDG goals for internet governance, because these are the goals what each and every conglomerate or the big companies follow, and based on these sustainability goals, the reports are made. So I guess this portion is still missing, what the UN has developed as their framework. So that is my question. How can we bring about that one of the sustainable? There are 17 goals. I guess there should be one 18th goal.
Thank you so much for raising that valid point, Rohit. Would someone like to answer or comment about Rohit's point? Someone from the fellows like to hear some fellow participation? You could type out your comments, you could take the mic. What are your thoughts on what Rohit just shared about sustainable development goals? Anybody?
Brenda, this is Jen, and I see there's actually some very good input already in chats. Actually, if people would like to take the mic and put their hand up and share it out loud for the transcript, that would be great as well. In specific, I think I pick on one of the comments in chat from Deborah Christine. She says, in relation to the point about human security as part of the cybersecurity notion, human-centric / centered security instead of nation-state-centric security, she thinks that it is important for the synthesis document to attempt to operationalize what human security means in cybersecurity. And there are different frameworks that which can be used as a guidance, including those mentioning usability, users' privacy, security, and safety as an example of the operationalization of human security in cybersecurity.
Thanks for sharing that, Jennifer. I think Deborah had her hand up as well. Deborah, would you like to take the floor and speak?
Hello. I hope my voice is clear this time. Yeah, just to add to what, thank you, Jennifer, for reading the comments. Just to add to that, in my mind, a policy recommendation which can be drawn from such operationalization, for example, is how states develop and implement a societal impact assessment framework for cyber attacks. Because like Gaia has already said, to a large extent, our understanding, national understanding about cybersecurity is the one that is nation state centered instead of human centered. And there has been a lot of discussions going on about what a human centered cybersecurity means, but I think it is also, it would be great if the synthesis document would attempt to also operationalize the human-centric cybersecurity into more practical, or like at least like principles or values which states can be used as a guidance for their policy making or policy making processes in cybersecurity. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you so much. We'd like to hear a little bit about the inclusion track as well. If we have some of fellows, some DC members would like to, or MSG members for the matter, if they'd like to speak a little bit about the inclusion track. There are aspects of digital economy, freedom of expression that are overlapping between the inclusion and the trust track. If someone has any comments on it, that'll be great. Nirosha shares, having a legal framework to protect people with differently abled people would be considered. Okay, legal frameworks, yes. Deborah also adds a policy recommendation which can be drawn from this operationalization of human-centric cybersecurity, I imagine would be, for example, a societal impact assessment framework of cyber attacks. Interesting. Rohit, are you still here?
Yes, Brenda, tell me.
Rohit, could you go ahead and share your question out loud once again for some more clarity?
Okay, so my question is, when these companies, they work on all corporate social responsibilities, so these are how we help out people together. Now, when you take out, when you draft policies on the CSRs regarding to sustainability, there are 17 goals, sustainable development goals, which have been assigned by the United Nations. Now, let us say that I'm a company, I have to do a CSR activity, and from these 17 goals, I choose few of them. And that is how I develop my framework and I make the society better. Let it be on land issues or development of women, etc. There are so many things over there. Now, these are something which is mandatory what a company has to do. And the world, if you look at it, is run by companies. You get 33% of the whole revenue from big companies like Apple and all this, like you get it, like companies like China, etc. And the 2% of the revenue comes from the CSR activities, which is a huge amount. What I'm saying is, how can we get an 18th goal, which is towards a sustainable internet? And how can UN be, you can suggest the United Nations that we need a 18th goal towards internet governance.
Okay, so you would recommend an 18th sustainable development goal for internet
because I feel that is important. The whole world runs on that, and if it goes down, you, I, or anyone, we can't talk to each other. We'll be back to our old ages. And probably with how the situations are, even the letters won't work.
We have Edmund with his hands up. Edmund, would you like to take this?
Yeah, I'm just responding to Rohit's suggestion. I think it's an interesting suggestion. I always like people who try to think out of the box. One of the things, though, maybe I think taking that thought further might actually be, because the 17 goals actually have lots of sub-goals, and many of the sub-goals are very much related to what we're talking about here, and the sustainability of the internet and the infrastructure, diversity, and all those kind of things are actually part of the 17 goals already. Having a collection of those sub goals and identifying them as internet governance related goals might actually be quite useful.
Thank you, Edmund. There are some follow-up chats as well. Cheryl,
Raj, do you want to just mention what you put in the chat?
Okay, sure. Cheryl Langton off the record. I just wanted to know where was it mandatory for corporations of any size to be good corporate citizens? As far as I know, I am unaware of any jurisdiction where this is a mandatory requirement or even expectation. It's a smart move, but there is no mandate.
okay, thank you. Thank you for pointing that out, Cheryl. Raj, you've mentioned a comment here. Would you like to speak about that?
Thanks, Brenda. Which one did you mean? I've been posting like mad, so
Sorry,
I don't know.
I'll give you some clarity. You mentioned, I don't think that is quite possible when the SDGs were developed, internet and ICTs were implicit in the achievement of those goals.
Yes, indeed. And I think someone after me also posted about how the internet and ICTs were a means to achieving those goals as opposed to being implicit, as opposed to being explicit. You know, I think you have to take the SDGs from a big picture perspective. So, and that's what, I mean, I was involved in some of those discussions going back some years now. I do remember there was a lot of discussions about why internet and ICTs, for the matter, explicitly are not covered. But there was reasoning behind that, as I suggested, and as others have also said here, that it was all about, you know, being using it as a means or as a tool to achieve them, as opposed to being the tool itself. So I think you need to differentiate between what are the aspirations for the SDGs compared to the actual tactics on how you get there. I think that's probably what differentiates the two.
Thank you, Raj, for clarifying that. Guy also mentions the role of private sector seems to have come out as a strong discussion in this session on don't shoot the messenger. Okay. Phil has a hand up. Phil, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Phil from Myanmar. I have a big concerns regarding the inclusion, sustainability, and trust. As far as we know, developing country are doing the great thing regarding the technology. I mean, developed country. On the other hand, the developing country are trying to get and innovate the technology like the developed country. But I'm concerned that how to we adjust the big gap between the technological knowledge, and also that how do we need to adjust between the digital device if there is a huge device between these two country, for example, like developing countries and a developed country, how should we solve it, and how should we adjust to reduce the these huge digital device, or also the digital knowledge gap between these two countries? I would like to hear the some of your opinions upon the how to reduce between the huge digital device to get towards the inclusion, sustainability, and trust. All of these are related to the. I believe that all of these three themes are related to the gap. If huge gap, I mean. Thank you. That's I would like to hear about it.
Thank you so much for the question, Phil. Would someone like to take the mic and comment or answer Phil's question on how to reduce digital divide? The floor is open. Please go ahead and take the mic. Meanwhile, I'm just going to go ahead and read the other comments that have been mentioned in the chat. Deborah mentions about the sustainable development goals. I don't think any specific sustainable goal on IG is more likely because the internet is more seen as a means instead of an end to SDGs. Okay, Raj, you've already clarified your point. Swaran, would you like to go ahead and speak?
Hi, Brinda. Going back to Piyush's question, I think it's a very important question. And even last year when I participated in APrIGF 2020, at the end of the day, after all these sessions, you still ask yourself this overarching, pressing question, that so what do we need to do to end the digital divide? But honestly speaking, it is we can never use a cookie cutter solution to this. It is a multidimensional problem. As you have also mentioned that gender is a huge part of the issue. And I personally think the issues are so deeply rooted, right down to the level of, patriarchy. It goes down to the level of divisions in terms of socioeconomic status, geographical locations. And recently the Pacific IGF, while the discussions were taking place, one of the findings, one of the key points that came out was that if the rural areas are excluded largely, which is obviously a huge problem in the Asia Pacific region as well, then what happens is, we could easily say, then why aren't the ISPs doing anything about it? But then there's a huge question there. Is it financially lucrative? Is it viable for the ISPs to even, set up a tower there, for example, right? So it also goes back to the development of the rural communities. It goes back to rural development. It goes back to, a multi-stakeholder approach, government, private sector, academia. I would say it starts with a good, thorough, in-depth research. The disparities we are talking about, can we group them? Can we actually go down and see, is it pertaining to gender? Is it really pertaining to socioeconomic status? Is it because of technological barriers? So I think we need to start with some research and then start with a holistic approach of trying to solve it, with all the stakeholders involved. But I would still, say rural development is one of the new angles that I have started to think about. I feel in the long term, that'll also be able to address the issue. There's lots of NGOs working around women empowerment, getting women involved in STEM programs. Even in Fiji, there's lots of initiatives currently, but the disparities are still there. So it goes to show that it cannot happen overnight, and we cannot adopt solutions from other regions, but maybe look at some good solutions and try to adapt some of it, customize it and use it in our regions. But of course, it's not going to happen overnight. It's a rigorous process.
Definitely, Swaran, the context matters. So very contextualized solutions that is required. Guy, you have something to add to this?
Yeah, just a last point. I think the question Fio is asking is very important. And Chengatai also talked about digital divide and the need to bridge the digital divide as one of the things that is central to the IGF's focus, right? I think what will also be good is to talk about, again, going back to my initial point of making it sort of government's responsibility to make sure that internet access of some form reaches all individuals, right? That's one part of the discussion. But I also think the kind of work that ISOC and others do in terms of democratizing internet infrastructure through community networks, etc., I think those also need to be mentioned in the synthesis document on how can rural communities provide internet connectivity for themselves without having to rely on commercial providers who have multiple other sort of interests weighing down on them, right? So I think it's really important to capture that in the synthesis document.
I agree, Guy. I agree totally. We have Bong's comment that I've missed. Bong, would you like to take the mic and share what you have on your mind?
Hi, I was just talking about inclusion for me.
which is very important to resolve first, especially access, because of the unfair and uneven distribution of access to the internet, for example, for many rural people, especially the poor, the persons with disabilities, who especially blind and deaf, who are not really being provided with appropriate assistive devices, and students as well, because education at the moment is dependent on connectivity, and that's why in my country there are two modes by which students can continue learning. One is through internet or sessions, and the other one is through the modular approach. Unfortunately, majority are into the modular approach, and the responsibility to fulfill those modules are left to the parents and to the children or students. Well, there are some little developments in my country. For example, we have a government agency created very recently called the Department of Information and Communications Technology. Well, it's trying to provide some free access to certain public places like parks, trains. These are helpful. However, they are not enough because the focus is still in the urban centers. Well, there are attempts to put some connectivities in community government centers, like which we call barangay, or the community local governments, but they are just not enough. So what I'm saying is inclusion is really a major issue here, and until we resolve that, the two, sustainability and trust, remain to be the issue of the privileged and the connected, meaning for those who really already have access. And although that is not to say that we should not address both, just that I think we should focus more on inclusion, because that also can address the issue of digital divide. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Bong. Those are some really crucial points that you highlighted. I'd like to go back to Edmund, because he has a comment on the chat that speaks about SDG 16. Edmund, would you like to quickly elaborate on this?
Sure, not much. I was just responding to the chat that raised the SDG 16. I think it's quite interesting, and I do think it relates to the internet shutdowns and especially the rapporteur report that says, I think it was Gaia or someone mentioned that we need to put a stake in the ground, or really say something about it. Probably say something about it this year, and we can relate to the report as well as SDG 16 if we want to.
We can definitely do that, Edmund. We could add that, or you could go ahead and add it. Thank you so much. So Jen, how are we with time? Okay, we are already 3 minutes past our deadline. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to have to wrap up. Is there any last comments, inputs from anybody else? Closing comments? Nirosha's Nirosha has mentioned something in the chat. I think in order to overcome digital divide, we can think from multiple angles like affordability, accessibility, and inclusion. All right. If there's nothing else, I'd like to really thank you so much for all your valuable inputs today and making your voice heard. I'm going to hand it to Sherry for some closing comments, and then we move. Oh, Rohit, Jen, do we have just 30 seconds? Yes, Rohit, please go ahead.
Okay, I will not take much of the time, but this is something that I noticed. This is connected to the global warming factor. Now, this thing happens mostly in our corporates, that whenever we send emails, and there's always a thank you email that has been replied back. This actually increases, carbon footprint. So according to the data, they say that every adult in the UK sent one less thank you email, it would save 16,433 tons of carbon a year. That's equivalent to taking 3,300 diesel cars off the road. So I guess we need to change some of our habits also while we reply, and efficient use of Google. So this is what I'm actually learning. We search unnecessary, we just put in words and we don't get the direct search. There should be something called clean searching. And this is very important. This will actually save a lot of carbon that has been released in the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohit. I'd also appreciate if you could add this as a comment on the synthesis document.
Will do.
Thank you so much. All right, Sherry, over to you for closing comments, and then we move to Jennifer.
Thank you, Brenda. I think we have 3 final comments, one from Marianne. If I could just add that overcoming the digital divide means overcoming other forms such as socio-economic, socio-cultural, and political. But that means fewer thank yous in our lives. Perhaps we could cut back on time-wasting uses of email and social media. Keep the thank you. Also from Ellen, I think for inclusion, we should also accommodate the specially abled people to comfortably access the internet by using accessibility menus in all websites very soon. So guys, very, very great, valuable input. Please put these onto the synthesis document, the comment platform link that Jen has sent earlier. And we have another session. 50 minutes is not enough for the last 2 days, and then tomorrow another 2 more days. We'll be taking input. 50 minutes really is not enough. Maybe we could talk to the organizing committees about more time later, but we only have 50 minutes this time. Let's make use of the public comments, the link that's there in the chat again, and we hope to see you again tomorrow. Have another great day of sessions tomorrow, and see you again at the end of the session. So Jen, over to you.
Thank you, Sherry, and thank you, Brenda, and thank you all for such a really exciting session. It's always this way. We always kind of run out of time at the end because everybody has such great ideas. Please, as you see on the slide, do go to comment.aprigf.asia and include all these great comments I see in the chat, the great comments that you said out loud on the mic. Please do put it in. It's really best in your own words, of course, but we are, the drafting committee and the secretariat team, we are also definitely capturing all the input that you've shared in the session. Just a quick little logistics point. When you go to this comment platform, it is WordPress-based platform. As you can see on the right-hand side, each paragraph is numbered, and also you'll be able to comment on each one. When you click on the little speech bubble, you'll be able to add your comment in directly. We will be asking you for your name and your email, but your email will not be published. And of course, all of this information is under our privacy policy that you can see on the main APrIGF.Asia website. So maybe Jenna, if you can drop the link one more time to the chat window so people can click on it. And yes. As Sherry has mentioned, we do have a second town hall session tomorrow. Please do come. There's going to be a full day of content and great input tomorrow. So it's really important for us to capture this at the end as well. And, hopefully, for the planning next year, we'll be able to get more time for the town hall sessions and maybe even one for the last day. So with that, we would like to thank you for your participation today. Thank you for your participation here at Town Hall Session 1, and please come back for 2. I know my colleagues have dropped in the chats that there is a social going on, so the details are there. Maybe, Jenna, you can post it one more time so people know. This is going to be hosted by our great participants from the YIGF, so please come and introduce yourselves to them and listen to what they have to say. They are great, very dynamic youth that are pretty much the future voices of agenda governance in our region. Thank you very much, and see you at the social.